Welcome to our Depth Dive. Today, we're going to be unpacking the life of Uthman ibn Affan, a truly captivating figure in early Islam. Our source material is a set of Islamic lectures that focus on his story, particularly his often overlooked contributions to the Muslim community. What really intrigued me, reading through all this was this fascinating contrast we see in Uthman's life. He was incredibly wealthy, a member of that powerful Banu Umayyad tribe, yet he was also renowned for his modesty. So how do those two things coexist?
It is a fascinating paradox, isn't it? It really
Mhm.
speaks to the depth of his character.
Exactly. And we're going to explore that paradox in detail. Plus, we'll uncover his surprising family ties to the Prophet Muhammad, the multiple times he was promised paradise for his actions, and the rather tragic reason he couldn't fight in the Battle of Badr. So let's rewind all the way back to Uthman's early life to see where it all began.
Okay. So Uthman was born into the Banu Umayyad tribe, a prominent clan in Mecca. And what's often missed is that his family tree actually intertwines with the Prophet Muhammad's.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying they were related?
They were indeed. They shared a common ancestor a couple of generations back. Their grandmothers, Uthman's maternal grandmother and the Prophet Muhammad's um, father's sister, were sisters, perhaps even twins. This makes Uthman and the Prophet second cousins.
Wow. This family connection, I mean, it completely changes my understanding of Uthman's upbringing. It makes you wonder, was he consciously or unconsciously modeling himself after the Prophet, even before Islam?
It's certainly possible. He was described as handsome, well-spoken, and known for his modesty, or haya in Arabic. Despite his wealth and status, he even resembled the prophet physically, with his build and thick beard.
Interesting. It sounds like he embodied many Islamic values even before the revelation.
Absolutely. Even before Islam, Uthman refused to participate in idol worship, never touched alcohol, and stayed away from immoral behavior. These qualities were, of course, central to the teachings Islam would later emphasize.
Right. That saying, I love you the way Quraysh loves Uthman, really takes on a new meaning now. It speaks volumes about the respect and admiration he commanded even in those early days.
Indeed it does. That admiration would be put to the test when the message of Islam started to spread.
Okay, so let's talk about his conversion to Islam. He was one of the earliest Muslims, right? How did that come about?
He was actually invited to Islam by Abu Bakr, who you'll recall was instrumental in bringing many early converts to the faith. Uthman embraced Islam almost immediately, becoming the fourth man to accept the faith after Abu Bakr, Ali, and Zayd ibn Haritha.
Wow. Given his prominent position in his tribe, how did they react to his conversion?
As you might expect, they saw his conversion as a major threat. They feared his influence would lead others to follow him. It got so bad that his own uncle, Al-Hakam ibn Abi Awas, resorted to torturing him in private, trying to force him to renounce Islam.
It's hard to imagine the courage it would take to stand firm in the face of such persecution, especially from your own family.
And yet, he did just that. Uthman remained steadfast in his beliefs, declaring that he would never abandon Islam or the Prophet, no matter the consequences.
His marriage to the Prophet's daughter, Ruqayya, must have further solidified his bond with the Prophet and his dedication to the burgeoning Muslim community.
Yes, and it's important to remember that this marriage took place after Ruqayya's divorce from the son of Abu Lahab, a staunch enemy of the Prophet. Imagine the impact this union must have had on both families. It was a clear demonstration of where Uthman's loyalty lay.
I hadn't thought about it from that angle before. It really highlights the courage it took to make that commitment.
It certainly does. And the Prophet clearly recognized Uthman's character. He famously told Ruqayya that no one was closer to him in character than Uthman.
That's incredibly high praise.
It is indeed. Shortly after their marriage, persecution in Mecca intensified, leading Uthman and Ruqayya to make a life-altering decision.
They were among the first Muslims to migrate to Abyssinia, right? That must have been a perilous journey.
It was. And consider this, the Prophet entrusted his own daughter to Uthman's care on this dangerous journey. That level of trust reveals the profound respect the Prophet had for Uthman.
Yeah, it really shows how their relationship went beyond just a familial connection. They had a deep bond of trust and mutual respect.
Absolutely. They eventually returned to Mecca, but later migrated again, this time to Medina. And it was in Medina that Uthman's talents as a merchant truly blossomed.
Didn't he become quite successful in Medina's marketplace?
Yes, he did. His honesty and pre-existing business connections made him a very successful merchant in Medina. It's a testament to his business acumen and adaptability.
And his success in Medina enabled him to become one of the most generous supporters of the early Muslim community. It seemed every time the prophet promised paradise as a reward for a particular deed, Uthman was the first to step up.
That's true. And these weren't just small contributions. His generosity was truly remarkable.
The story of the Well of Ruma is a perfect example of his generosity.
Exactly. Medina, as you know, didn't have abundant water sources. And the owner of this particular well was exploiting the situation by charging exorbitant prices. The prophet announced that whoever purchased the well would be guaranteed paradise. Uthman immediately negotiated a deal to buy half the well, offering free access to water on his designated days.
What a brilliant move. He essentially created a system where everyone benefited and it undermined the well owner's greed.
Yes, people naturally flocked to the well on Uthman's days, leaving the owner with no profit on his own days. Eventually, he was forced to sell the remaining half to Uthman. Of course, Uthman, being the savvy businessman he was, negotiated a lower price, gaining full ownership of the well.
Wow. He turned a greedy scheme into a long-lasting act of charity. I can only imagine the impact that well must have had on the community, especially during those early years in Medina.
It's estimated that the well, which has irrigated gardens in Medina for centuries, is now worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The revenue generated from the land has been used for further charitable endowments, all thanks to that one act of generosity by Uthman. It really speaks to his understanding of sustainable giving.
It wasn't just the well, though, right? Didn't he also play a significant role in financing other important projects for the Muslim community?
He did. He financed the expansion of the Prophet's mosque and regularly purchased the freedom of slaves. And then there was his monumental contribution to the Tabuk expedition.
The Tabuk expedition. Remind me about that.
This was a particularly difficult expedition for the Muslims. The journey was long, the weather was scorching hot, and resources were scarce. The Prophet called on his companions to finance the army, promising them paradise in return. Uthman donated an astonishing 940 camels and 60 horses, all fully equipped for the journey.
Wow. That scene must have been truly remarkable. Imagine that moment. An army ready to embark on a grueling journey, and then Uthman steps up with this almost unbelievable act of generosity.
It's no wonder the Prophet said, "Nothing can harm Uthman after what he has done today." It's a powerful statement, almost a foreshadowing of the trials he would later face, as though the Prophet knew Uthman would need unwavering strength to navigate those challenging times.
Speaking of trials, the one that stands out, of course, is Uthman's absence from the Battle of Badr, a defining moment in Islamic history.
It's a rather poignant story, actually. Uthman was unable to participate in the Battle of Badr because he was caring for the Prophet's daughter, his own wife, Ruqayya, who was gravely ill. He had the Prophet's express permission to stay behind.
So, while the Muslims were achieving a monumental victory against all odds, Uthman was facing a very personal and profound loss.
That's exactly right. It must have been a day of conflicting emotions for him.
But there's more to this story, right? Didn't he still receive recognition for the battle even though he wasn't physically present?
Yes. Despite his physical absence, the Prophet counted Uthman amongst the veterans of Badr because of his intention and the circumstances that prevented him from participating.
That really highlights the importance Islam places on intentions. That even when circumstances prevent us from performing a deed, our sincere intention can still hold weight.
It certainly does. And it's important to remember that Uthman's trials didn't end there. Tragedies struck again shortly after Ruqayya's death when his young son Abdullah also passed away. He was only 6 years old.
Losing both your wife and your young son in such a short span, that's unimaginable. How did Uthman cope with such a profound loss?
The Prophet, seeing Uthman's immense grief, offered him a unique and extraordinary honor. Following the instruction of Angel Gabriel, he offered Uthman the hand of his other daughter, Kulthum, in marriage.
And that's how he earned his famous title, Dun Nurayn, the possessor of two lights.
Exactly. Marrying two of the Prophet's daughters was a gesture of tremendous compassion from the Prophet and a testament to the high regard in which he held Uthman.
But amidst this happiness, there was also a sense of foreboding, wasn't there? Didn't the Prophet repeatedly warn Uthman about his future martyrdom?
He did. It's as if the Prophet had glimpses of what lay ahead and was preparing Uthman for the immense trials that awaited him.
It's almost like a recurring theme in Uthman's life. These moments of immense joy and profound sorrow, all kind of intertwined. But despite those repeated warnings of martyrdom, life did go on, and Uthman continued to serve the Muslim community. Weren't there specific incidents where the Prophet's predictions seemed to come into sharp focus?
There were indeed. One that stands out is the Pledge of Ridwan, which took place during the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. This event really showcases the depth of the bond between Uthman and the Prophet, as well as the high esteem in which he was held by the Muslims.
Okay. For those of us who need a refresher, can you quickly explain the context of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah?
Certainly, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah was a pivotal moment in early Islamic history. The Muslims, led by the Prophet, were on their way to Mecca for pilgrimage. However, the Meccans, still hostile toward the Muslims, blocked their entry. Negotiations ensued, and Uthman was chosen as the ambassador to represent the Muslims in Mecca.
So Uthman was sent into the heart of enemy territory, tasked with negotiating a peaceful resolution. I mean, that must have been a nerve-wracking responsibility.
You can imagine the tension. And while Uthman was in Mecca, a rumor spread among the Muslims that he had been killed by the Meccans. This sparked outrage and grief among the companions. The Prophet, fearing the worst, called upon his followers to make a solemn pledge.
The Pledge of Ridwan. What exactly did this pledge entail?
It was a pledge to fight to the death to avenge Uthman. Over 1,400 Muslims, fueled by their love for Uthman and their commitment to Islam, vowed to lay down their lives if necessary. The intensity of their commitment is even mentioned in the Quran, where Allah describes his pleasure with the believers when they pledged allegiance under the tree.
So even though the rumor of Uthman's death turned out to be false, the pledge itself became a testament to the profound bond between him and the Prophet, as well as his standing within the Muslim community.
Precisely. And there's a fascinating detail that emphasizes the Prophet's deep connection with Uthman. After all the companions had pledged allegiance, the Prophet clasped his own hand and said, "This is for me, and this is for Uthman." It's a powerful symbol of their unity and solidarity.
Almost like a foreshadowing of their eventual reunion in paradise.
Perhaps. And even during this tense standoff, Uthman's character shines through. While he was in Mecca, the Meccans tried to entice him. They offered to let him perform the tawaf, the circumambulation of the Kaaba, but wouldn't extend that offer to the other Muslims.
So they were trying to create division, trying to exploit the situation. How did Uthman respond?
He refused,
Mm.
stating he wouldn't perform tawaf unless the Prophet and the other Muslims could also do so. He wouldn't participate in something that would divide the community, even if it meant delaying his own act of worship.
Wow, he was willing to put aside his personal desires for the sake of unity and loyalty. That's remarkable.
It really is. And his decision highlights his understanding of the true spirit of Islam. He was prioritizing the collective good over individual benefit. The Prophet, confident in Uthman's character, reassured the companion, saying, "No matter how long he stays in Mecca, he will not perform tawaf until I perform tawaf. I know him."
This incident, along with his absence at Badr, really highlights a recurring theme in Uthman's life. He consistently faced these difficult choices, often involving personal sacrifice, and he consistently prioritized his faith and his loyalty to the Prophet. It almost feels like these experiences were preparing him for the immense responsibilities he would later shoulder as the third caliph of Islam.
I think that's a very insightful observation. Those trials, those moments of testing were shaping his character, preparing him for leadership.
So before we delve into the complexities of his caliphate, let's take a moment to recap what we've learned about Uthman so far. What are the key takeaways from this period of his life?
Well, we've seen that Uthman was a man of remarkable contrasts, immense wealth and genuine humility, a prominent lineage yet known for his modesty. He embraced Islam early on and faced persecution with unwavering faith. His marriage to not one, but two daughters of the Prophet solidified his place in Islamic history.
And his generosity was truly exceptional, as we saw with the story of the Well of Ruma. His actions continue to benefit Muslims to this day.
Absolutely. And despite missing the Battle of Badr due to caring for his sick wife, he was still recognized for his sincere intention and commitment. The Pledge of Ridwan further highlighted the unique bond he shared with the Prophet and the high regard in which he was held by the Muslim community.
So, with all of that as a backdrop, let's dive into his caliphate. We know it was marked by both remarkable achievements and significant challenges. What were some of the notable accomplishments of Uthman's time as caliph?
His caliphate saw a period of tremendous expansion for the Islamic Empire. He built upon the foundations laid by his predecessors, Abu Bakr and Umar, leading to the conquest of new territories and the spread of Islam across vast geographical regions.
So he essentially continued the administrative and military structures that had already been established.
He did. He maintained the existing system of provinces and governors, ensuring efficient governance across this rapidly expanding empire. He also continued to strengthen the Muslim army, consolidating its power and efficiency.
And what about the challenges? What were some of the key obstacles Uthman faced during his caliphate?
Well, as the Islamic Empire grew, so did the complexities of governing such a vast and diverse territory. He had to contend with economic disparities, political rivalries, and the inherent challenges of integrating different cultures and belief systems into a single political entity.
So it was more than just expanding the borders, it was about managing the complexities that came with that expansion.
Exactly. And as often happens in times of rapid change and upheaval, rumors and misinformation began to circulate, targeting Uthman's leadership.
It's a bit surprising, isn't it? Given Uthman's reputation for piety and generosity, you'd think he'd be immune to such attacks.
Unfortunately, no one is truly immune to the power of rumors, especially in times of uncertainty and social unrest. There's a very telling anecdote in Sahih al-Bukhari that perfectly illustrates this point. Oh, what's the story? I'm always intrigued by these historical anecdotes.
During the Hajj pilgrimage, a man from Egypt approached Abdullah ibn Umar, the son of Caliph Umar, and started questioning Uthman's leadership based on distorted versions of events.
Distorted in what way?
He brought up Uthman's absence at Badr and the Pledge of Ridwan, but conveniently left out the context surrounding those events. He even went so far as to claim that Uthman had fled from the Battle of Uhud, which was completely false. It's incredible how easily misinformation can spread and take root, even among those who might consider themselves righteous. It reminds us of the importance of critical thinking and seeking out the full context of any situation.
Absolutely. And, it's particularly disheartening when we see this manipulation of information used to undermine a leader who had demonstrated such consistent commitment to the Muslim community.
So what were the specific accusations being leveled against Uthman? What were the grievances that fueled this growing discontent?
The accusations were varied, ranging from allegations of nepotism to claims of financial impropriety. Some argued that he favored his own family members in government positions, while others accused him of misusing funds from the public treasury.
Did these accusations have any basis in reality? Were they completely fabricated, or was there some element of truth to them?
It's difficult to say for certain. There's no denying that Uthman did appoint some relatives to key positions. However, there's no concrete evidence suggesting he was engaging in outright corruption or enriching himself at the expense of the Muslim community. It's a complex situation, and it's important to avoid making judgments based solely on accusations and rumors.
It sounds like a classic case of truth being mixed with falsehood to create a narrative that fits a particular agenda. Sadly, this tactic of manipulating information for political gain is something we still see today.
It is a timeless tactic, sadly. And in Uthman's case, these rumors, constantly circulating and amplified, eventually fueled a rebellion against his rule.
So how did Uthman respond to this growing unrest? How did he handle the accusations and the mounting pressure from those who opposed him?
His response was, in many ways, a testament to his character. Despite the mounting pressure and the escalating threats, Uthman chose to meet the situation with patience and restraint. He refused to retaliate with violence or engage in power struggles that would further divide the Muslim community.
That's quite remarkable given the circumstances. It would have been understandable, perhaps even expected, for him to respond with force.
Many of his supporters, including prominent figures like Ali, Hassan, Hussein, Talha, and Zubair, urged him to take a more aggressive stance, to crush the rebellion before it spiraled out of control. They even offered to fight on his behalf, to defend him against those who were besieging his home.
And yet he refused to allow bloodshed in his name. He was willing to sacrifice his own safety, even his own life, to preserve the unity of the Muslim community.
Exactly. He prioritized the greater good over his own personal well-being. He often quoted a verse from the Quran. To feel the pain of retaliation in this world is far easier than feeling the pain of the retaliation in the hereafter.
It seems he believed that enduring injustice in this life was preferable to facing divine punishment in the next.
Yes, and that his primary concern was to act in accordance with what he believed would please Allah, not to defend his earthly power or position.
It makes you wonder if he saw his impending martyrdom as a fulfillment of the prophet's prophecy, something he had to accept with grace and unwavering faith.
There's a poignant story that speaks to this acceptance. On the last day of his life, Uthman had a dream. He saw the Prophet, Abu Bakr, and Umar. The Prophet asked him a series of questions. O Uthman, have they prohibited you from water? Have they forbidden you from food? Did they prohibit you from praying in my masjid?
I can just imagine the scene, the three of them together, as if welcoming Uthman into their midst. How did Uthman respond to the Prophet's questions?
To each question, Uthman replied, Yes, O Messenger of Allah. Then the Prophet uttered those comforting words, Glad tidings, O Uthman, Tonight you will break your fast with me, Abu Bakr and Umar.
It's a beautiful and haunting image, a foreshadowing of his impending death and his reunion with those he loved and admired most.
And shortly after waking from that dream, Uthman was murdered by the rebels while reading the Quran, a tragic end to a life filled with both remarkable contributions and profound trials.
It's almost unbelievable that someone so devoted to Islam, someone so loved by the Prophet, would meet such a violent end at the hands of fellow Muslims.
It's a stark reminder of the fragility of unity and the destructive power of discord. It's also a testament to the depth of Uthman's faith, that even in the face of such adversity, he remained steadfast in his beliefs and his commitment to peace.
His death must have sent shockwaves throughout the Muslim community. How did they react to his assassination?
His death was a profound shock to the Muslims, and the circumstances surrounding his burial further underscore the turmoil of the time. He was denied a public funeral and was buried at night to prevent further unrest.
Imagine that, a man who had contributed so much to Islam, a companion of the Prophet being buried in secrecy, under the cover of darkness. Where was he laid to rest?
He was initially buried outside the main graveyard in Medina, known as Janatul Bakir, which is a sacred burial ground for Muslims, particularly for those close to the Prophet. But over time, as the graveyard expanded, his grave was eventually encompassed within its boundaries.
It's almost a symbolic gesture, isn't it? As if even in death he was reunited with the Prophet and his closest companions.
It's a fitting, albeit bittersweet, ending to his story. It speaks to the enduring legacy of Uthman ibn Affan, a man whose life was a testament to faith, generosity, and unwavering loyalty, even in the face of unimaginable adversity.
Uthman's story, it's truly captivating. We've seen his journey from a wealthy merchant to a devoted companion of the Prophet, facing, all these trials and triumphs along the way. His unwavering generosity, his commitment to the Muslim community, it's remarkable. But I think I'm particularly struck by his resilience. In the face of all those accusations, those threats during his caliphate, how did he maintain his composure?
His resilience is indeed admirable. It's almost as if all those earlier challenges, those moments of personal loss and political tension were like preparing him for that final test of his faith.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that his deep connection to the Quran played a significant role in sustaining him during those turbulent times. Can we delve a bit deeper into that?
Absolutely. Uthman's love for the Quran wasn't just a matter of recitation. It was a source of strength and guidance throughout his life. He truly believed that a pure heart wouldn't tire of God's words, and his actions reflected that belief.
And we know he would recite the entire Quran twice daily, which is an incredible feat in itself. But it sounds like it was more than just a ritual for him. It was like a way of life.
It was. He found solace in its verses, especially during those final years of his caliphate, when he was surrounded by so much conflict and turmoil. In fact, he was known to complete a full recitation of the Quran in a single prayer cycle on some occasions.
Wow. That's incredible dedication. Do you think this constant engagement with the Quran shaped his responses to the challenges he faced as caliph?
I think it undoubtedly did. The Quran's teachings on patience, perseverance, and seeking Allah's pleasure above all else, they were deeply ingrained in his character. They guided his actions, particularly during those final years when he faced such intense opposition.
Right. Can you give us some concrete examples of how those Quranic principles manifested in his behavior?
Certainly. Remember the verse that emphasizes the importance of giving charity without boasting or causing harm. Uthman embodied that principle. He never bragged about his immense contributions to the Muslim community. Even when facing accusations of financial impropriety, he chose not to defend himself by listing his past deeds. He didn't want to tarnish his sincere acts of charity with any hint of self-aggrandizement.
So he was more focused on the purity of his intentions than on proving his innocence in the eyes of others.
Exactly. And his commitment to justice, rooted in the Quran's teachings, was evident in even the smallest of his interactions. There's a well-known story about him insisting that a young servant pinch him back and pinch him hard after he accidentally hurt the boy. It seems like a trivial incident, but it highlights his deep aversion to oppression and his belief in accountability, even for unintentional harm.
So he wasn't just concerned with grand acts of justice. He recognized that it starts with individual interactions, with treating everyone fairly and with compassion.
And then there's his decision to forbid his supporters from defending him with force. That decision reflects a deep understanding of the Quranic principle of seeking Allah's pleasure above all else. He knew that violence would only exacerbate the conflict and cause further division within the Muslim community.
He was willing to sacrifice his own life to prevent further bloodshed and preserve the unity of the Ummah.
His story is truly a powerful reminder of the impact our faith can have on our actions, even when we're facing unimaginable difficulties.
So as we reach the end of our deep dive into Uthman ibn Affan's life, what key takeaways would you leave our listeners with? What lessons can we glean from his remarkable journey?
Well, I think there are several crucial insights we can all take away from Uthman's story. Firstly, his life underscores the vital importance of seeking knowledge and understanding. Just like that man from Egypt who questioned Uthman's leadership based on incomplete and distorted information, we too must be vigilant in our pursuit of truth.
Especially in today's world where, misinformation spreads like wildfire, we need to be like discerning consumers of information, to critically evaluate what we hear and to seek out multiple perspectives.
Exactly. It's a call to be more discerning, to question our assumptions, and to strive for a deeper understanding of complex situations before forming judgments. And secondly, Uthman's life reminds us that true leadership isn't about power or control, but about service and sacrifice. Here is a man of immense wealth and influence, yet he consistently chose to use his resources and his position to benefit others, even when it meant putting himself at risk.
His generosity wasn't, just a fleeting act of charity. It was a lifelong commitment woven into the fabric of his being, a reflection of his deep faith and his love for the Prophet and the Muslim community.
And finally, Uthman's unwavering faith in the face of adversity should inspire us all. He faced unimaginable challenges: personal loss, betrayal, political turmoil, even threats to his life. Yet his belief in Allah and his commitment to the teachings of the Quran remained steadfast. He found solace and strength in his spiritual practices, reminding us that our connection with the divine can be an anchor in the stormiest of seas.
His story is a powerful reminder that while, worldly gain and recognition may be fleeting, true reward lies in seeking the pleasure of Allah.
And perhaps his life also encourages us to look inward and examine how we react to challenging information. Do we approach it with a genuine desire to understand, or do we readily accept whatever aligns with our preconceived notions? It's a question worth pondering as we navigate the complexities of our own world.
Well, Uthman's story has been both inspiring and thought-provoking. It's a reminder that even the most righteous individuals can be targets of slander and injustice. But it also shows us that faith, integrity, and compassion can guide us through the darkest of times.
His legacy is a testament to the enduring power of these virtues.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Uthman ibn Affan. We hope you've gained new insights into this remarkable figure in Islamic history.
And that you'll carry these lessons with you as you continue your own journey of learning and growth.
Until next time.